This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. Musical theater and rock and roll are about as different as Andrew Lloyd Webber and Gene Simmons. But that hasn't stopped the two worlds from colliding on Broadway. Whether it's a sense of adventure, ego, or the embrace of a hidden theater kid inside, Broadway is no stranger to rock stars occasionally swapping out hand horns for jazz hands, to varying levels of success. For every hit that turns things up to 11, there's a handful that crash harder on stage than a Gibson guitar. I'm Brendan with Wait in the Wings, and these are 5 times rock stars tried writing a musical. But before we talk about all these rock and rollers attempting to conquer Broadway, let's take a second to talk about a true rock star who can keep you safe on the internet. This video's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Surfshark helps keep your online identity safe by encrypting all of the information sent between your devices and the internet, protecting all of your personal data from big companies, cyber criminals, or even worse, Bono. With all the digging I do for Wait in the Wings, I know how important it is to practice safe searching. Surfshark also has the added benefit of helping me change my virtual location to one of over 100 countries, which really comes in handy when I need information, videos, or books that aren't available in my country. Surfshark is the only VPN to make you feel like a VIP. And right now you can head to surfshark.deal/waitinthewings and use code WAITINTHEWINGS to get an extra 3 months for free. If you don't like it, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Link in the description. Oh boy, here we go. There's lots to choose from when wondering what a Spider-Man musical should sound like. From the sweeping orchestral scores of Danny Elfman to the zany groove of the 1960s television series. But when producer Tony Adams started to assemble a creative dream team to bring The Wall Crawler to Broadway, there was only one logical choice.
My name is Bono, and I am a rock star.
At the start of the early 2000s, the Irish rock band U2, led by singer Bono and guitarist The Edge, experienced a commercial and critical resurgence. Following the failure of their 1988 album, Rattle and Hum, the band underwent a complete reinvention of their sound, shifting away from pure punk rock to something much more atmospheric and larger than life. Given the amount of fame and money Bono was making through albums and concert tours, the prospect of him actually pausing all that just to write a musical seemed far-fetched. But after one snarky remark from Andrew Lloyd Webber, in which the composer joked, "I'd like to thank rock musicians for leaving me alone for 25 years, Bono decided to give Lord Andy a run for his money. Bono and The Edge officially signed on to compose the music for Spider-Man: Turn Off the Dark. What started as an exciting foray into the world of theater quickly turned sour when Bono realized just how time-consuming the project was. Surprisingly, having a composer on site every day when creating a musical is actually pretty important. And Bono and The Edge's absence for large chunks of the development process started to hurt the show. When previews for Spider-Man finally started in New York in November of 2010, U2 set out for a concert tour of New Zealand. The musical's director, Julie Taymor, even sent them an email begging the duo to come back and help her save the show. When Turn Off the Dark eventually did open, after a historic 183 previews, critics took turns stomping on the $75 million spider, with Ben Brantley of the New York Times referring to the songs as a blur of sustained electronic twang of varying volume, increasing and decreasing in intensity like a persistent headache. Despite his limited time in New York City, Bono still held a large amount of political power backstage, and in 2011, he set aim at his longtime friend, Julie Taymor. Bono led a legit backstage coup to get rid of Taymor, an act that quickly ended her tenure as the show's director, destroyed their decades-long friendship, and sent the media into a flurry. When Bono took to the stage at the Tony Awards, he was met with laughter from the theatrical community, and as of 2023, he has yet to even tease the idea of writing another musical. Bono's musical partner, The Edge, was admittedly always nervous about how the time commitment of writing a musical could interfere with their tours. In order to persuade The Edge, Bono told him that it would only take him about 6 weeks to write the music. After all, it only took Elton John about 2 weeks to write a Broadway musical a few years prior. In 2003, Elton John signed on to compose Lestat, a musical radically different in tone to his 2 previous Broadway musicals with Disney's The Lion King and Aida. Lestat, based on Anne Rice's book series The Vampire Chronicles, represented a landmark moment in Elton John's Broadway tenure, as it was his first time teaming up with longtime lyricist Bernie Taupin to write a musical. Hopes were high for the pair's twist on the violent and sexy vampire, as their track record included some of the biggest hits of the 20th century, including Tiny Dancer and Crocodile Rock. However, John and Taupin's bouncy and bright energy clashed with the dark and gothic tone of Lestat. A less than stellar run in San Francisco threatened to throw a stake in the heart of this vampire musical, leaving the creative team trying everything to raise it from the dead for a Broadway run. Well, most of the creative team. After spending a grand total of 2 weeks writing the songs for Lestat, Elton John chose to stay out of the day-to-day operations, instead splitting his time between concert tours, a Las Vegas residency, and writing another musical based on the film Billy Elliot. With Elton John's focus elsewhere, he left his collaborator, Bernie Taupin, to take a much more hands-on role for Lestat. As the show inched closer to opening night on Broadway, the creative team changed roughly 70% of the musical. Changes that Elton John didn't see until a few weeks before opening, claiming the new Broadway version allegedly left him knocked out by the changes. Critics and audiences didn't agree, with many calling the show dreary and referring to Elton John's music as dutiful, meandering, and quick to evaporate. Lestat officially opened on April 25th, 2006. It closed 1 month later. But unlike Bono's Broadway foray, Elton John's abrupt failure of Lestat couldn't keep him away from the bright lights of New York City. And just 3 years later, he was Tony nominated for the Broadway version of Billy Elliot. But Elton John wasn't the only rock star with a movie-based Broadway musical in 2009. Just 2 theaters down, a musicalization of the movie 9 to 5 prepared to open with a score from country legend Dolly Parton. It all started when the head of Showtime Network, Robert Greenblatt, told the film's screenwriter Patricia Resnick that he wanted to do a 9 to 5 musical based on the movie about 3 female employees taking revenge on a tyrannical boss. Resnick shared the same desire. Armed with a working script for the musical, she and Greenblatt flew to Nashville to meet with the only person they could think of to write the music for the show, Dolly Parton. Parton not only starred in the original film, she also wrote and performed 9 to 5's theme song called, 9 to 5, and undisputedly held the crown as the Queen of Country. When asked if she would compose the score, Parton responded, "Well, I've never done something like this, but I'll take a crack at it. But if I'm not doing good, you tell me and get someone else, okay?" Within a year, Parton wrote close to 20 new songs for the musical, a process she described as creatively freeing compared to the strict expectations of writing for traditional albums. As is often the case with rock star composers, Parton's other projects didn't stop just because she was working on a new musical. In 2008 alone, Parton released a new album called Backwoods Barbie, filmed a couple guest spots for Hannah Montana, and even started a concert tour that was scheduled to run from March to November. The problem was that 9 to 5 expected to have its first out-of-town tryout in Los Angeles that September, right in the middle of the 6-month concert tour. In a testament to her dedication, Dolly Parton scheduled no September dates for the Backwoods Barbie tour, all to give 9 to 5 her undivided attention. She did the same thing when the show eventually made the move to Broadway. It was a tumultuous transfer, But Parton was still in the theater every night and often ran on stage to vamp when a piece of the technically intricate set inevitably malfunctioned. When 9 to 5 opened in April of 2009, the show received mixed to negative reviews, with one consistent bright spot in Dolly Parton's music. Parton's willingness to set aside time and prioritize 9 to 5 even after it left Broadway led to the show finding a second life, with many going so far as to call the tour version the definitive version of the musical. But Parton's dedication to 9 to 5 doesn't come close to what singer-songwriter Sara Bareilles pulled off with Waitress. In 2013, Bareilles scored her third top 40 hit with the song Brave. But she was bored. Life as a pop star grew stale, especially since she never wanted to be one in the first place. Her breakout hit Love Song was an FU to her record label for asking her for a style of pop she didn't want to write. Bareilles sensed she was going down a road she didn't want to travel, and, craving a new challenge, reached out to a theater agent to set her sights on Broadway. Bareilles acted in high school. She was eaten by a plant in Little Shop of Horrors, but theater in New York was a whole new ballgame. A humiliating and humbling audition for Stephen Sondheim left Bareilles with a realization of just how much dedication it took to do live theater. Soon, she found herself in a meeting with director Diane Paulus, who offered her the chance to write the score for a musical version of Waitress. The 2007 movie about, you guessed it, a waitress dealing with an abusive husband, a pregnancy, an affair with her gynecologist, and baking pies. Waitress came at an inflection point for Bareilles, whose personal journey closely mirrored that of the fictional lead character Jenna. As she put it in an interview with The New Yorker, Jenna was a woman at a moment of reconciling the person she thought she would become with the person she actually was. Bareilles made history when she joined Broadway's first all-female creative team to bring Waitress to the stage, going all in on the intense journey of writing the music for the show. When it officially opened on Broadway on April 24, 2016, Waitress was met with rave reviews. Variety declared that Bareilles wrote a charming score that suits the quirky material, and the New York Times called her music appealing, which, in terms of the New York Times, is basically a rave. With a Grammy nomination and 4 Tony Award nominations, the real high point for Bareilles came in 2017, when she took over for the lead role of Jenna. Upon the announcement that she'd be making her Broadway debut, ticket sales shot up more than $1 million in just one day. But Bareilles wasn't alone in her creative resentment of the top hit-making machine. In 1996, singer-songwriter Duncan Sheik released his self-titled debut album. Intended as a weird folk album, it quickly morphed into something else entirely when the song Barely Breathing charted on the Billboard Top 100, a place it stayed for an unexpected 55 weeks. But Sheik didn't want to build a career trying to recreate the hit song. Instead, he went to the other end of the spectrum and spent the next few years experimenting with his sound, choosing the creative over the commercial. Understandably, the experimental approach led to a dive in his record sales. By 1999, Sheik played smaller and smaller venues and struggled to make ends meet. A practicing Buddhist, Sheik went to a culture center in downtown New York City. That's where he met a playwright named Stephen Sater. What started as conversations about Buddhism soon shifted to talks about their creative lives, and eventually a collaboration between the two. Sater handed him a copy of the play Spring Awakening and told Sheik that they should adapt it into a musical. Sheik hesitated. He didn't exactly feel a lot of stylistic kinship with the tired and predictable sound of musical theater. But after Sheik read the play, he realized that the 19th century German play about 3 teenagers grappling with their budding sexuality was kind of punk rock. The team decided to keep the show set in 1891, but chose to use music that was completely contemporary. A mix of rock, folk, electronic, and 20th century classical music. The switch to writing punk rock in a way that worked for musical theater represented a huge pivot from Chic's softer adult pop style. But it was necessary. The feelings each of the characters experienced in Spring Awakening were intense, so the music needed an edge. When the show opened, it effectively flipped Broadway on its head, introducing a new take on the so-called rock musical that leaned heavier into contemporary rock sound rather than the musical theater with a rock twist sound. Spring Awakening found Duncan Sheik at a time he needed it the most. It finally gave him a bigger platform to experiment, to soothe himself, and to heal. His whole mission was to create music and push boundaries doing it. And Duncan Sheik definitely did that again in 2015 when he composed the music for Broadway's first all-electronic score, American Psycho the Musical. Click on this video to hear the too wild to believe story of how Bret Easton Ellis's dark serial killer novel became a musical, and ultimately got axed way too soon.